You're listening to the Talking Headways Podcast Network. This is Talking Headways, a weekly podcast about sustainable transportation and urban design. I'm Jeff Wood. This week we're joined by Stephanie Dockery to discuss Bloomberg Philanthropies Public Art Challenge. Stephanie discusses how bus art can get a cult following, how artists are creating attention in their cities with temporary art, and what happens after the projects disappear. Stay with us. Today's podcast is brought to you by our super amazing and kind Patreon supporters. We appreciate you all keeping this show and Mondays at the Overhead Wire going. To join this merry band of subway crayonistas and city smarties, go to patreon.com/theoverheadwire. $2 a month gets you some stickers and a handwritten note sent with a cool train station stamp. $10 a month gets you one of our transportation scars. And if you want to just give a single dollar a month, you'll be able to get the podcast with 0 outside ads or podcast recommendations in Patreon. We'll leave information in the show notes about how to do it and how to get it into your podcatcher. We've also recently put up some bonus material and have weekly free posts from our newsletter intro, so check it out if you haven't already. And speaking of scarves, it's still winter, so get your heavyweight bus or bike scarves. You definitely need one for you, your friends, your colleagues, and for the anti-bus activists you just want to frustrate. If you want to get one of the bus or bike scarves or the lightweight bike scarf for hot climates, visit theoverheadwire.com or support us on Patreon. There are many other ways to support the show, including buying books from the bookshop site, either the books from the authors we interview, or any book you like. bookshop.org/shop/theoverheadwire. And find our Cars Are Cholesterol merch at bit.ly/carsarecholesterol. And for anything else, including the Town Planning and Practice audiobook that plays like a podcast, visit theoverheadwire.com. You can also get that podcast from Libby at your public library. And finally, definitely sign up for the now 20-year-old daily newsletter at theoverheadwire.com, established in 2006, and our over 100,000 item link archive tagged by topic and city. We'll leave a YouTube explainer video in the show notes for that one as well. Or you can just keep listening and enjoying the show. We appreciate that too. You can find us mostly on Blue Sky and Mastodon, sometimes on Threads, Instagram, Flickr, YouTube, Substack, and LinkedIn if you want to connect, usually at the Overhead Wire, but with Flickr, it's called Transit Nerds. We've got some great stuff coming up in our 13th year of the podcast, so keep on listening for announcements, but for now, just enjoy the show. Hey everybody, I decided to move this part of my thank yous up from the post-credits to right here smack dab at the start because I do want to recognize the folks who are Dallas tier or higher Patreon supporters. It really helps us out and we super appreciate it. When I get new supporters, I'll update this section, so I hope that happens often. So first names only, but big thanks to Andrew, Ben, Derek, Gabriel, Glenn, Greg, James, Jeremy, Jim, Joseph, Catherine, Mal, Marcus, Matthew, Mike, Nicholas, Abraham, Oliver, Steve, Abby, Ed, Matthew, Sylvia, and recently added Andrew A. All right, thank you all very much. Let's get to the show. Stephanie Dockery, welcome to the Talking Headways podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I work at Bloomberg Philanthropies and lead our Public Art Challenge, which is a program that supports nationwide temporary public art with cities around the country. We are currently working with 8 cities, but have supported 17 cities to date since 2014. $1 million grants to have mayors apply to work with artists, nonprofits, and create these temporary public art projects that create public-private partnerships and create economic impact and economic benefit for cities, bring people together, and really center artists as civic leaders.
That's awesome. I'm wondering how you got into what you're doing, though. Like, have you always been interested in art? Have you always been interested in cities? Like, what is your connection between the two parts of the fold?
Yes, I've always been interested in art. I studied art history and English and got my master's in art business, and have always worked in arts and culture and nonprofits, largely in New York. So I really come to this work with the focus on arts and culture, working in arts organizations, building partnerships with nonprofits, whether that is to support like funding or programs, supporting culture workers and supporting artists. That's my personal passion, and I've been lucky to be at Bloomberg Philanthropies for about 7.5 years working on this project.
Tell us about the project. What is the Public Art Challenge and how did it come about?
So it was launched in 2014, and it is a program where mayors compete to get $1 million grants to create temporary public art that centers a civic issue, a local challenge in one's community. And mayors work together with nonprofits and artists to create temporary public art that addresses unhoused folks, climate change, public health, racial inequality. And these programs have a 2-year term. Right now we have 8 cities, so 154 mayors applied, which is very exciting that that many mayors saw arts and culture as a way to bring people together, bring their cities back, specifically after COVID, and to affect change in their communities. Art has a great way of obviously creating beauty, and we're able to create beauty in public space. But because of that, people get involved in a civic issue that they may not be focused on. They may not be willing to have the conversation about the environment or public health, but through art that helps stimulate the discussion, but also brings people together and beautifies our public space and helps us reclaim our public space. So, as I said, we're working with 8 cities in this current round, which is round 3. We started in 2014, so the prior round had 5 cities and the first round had 4 cities. This work comes out of Mayor Mike Bloomberg and our CEO, Patty Harris, who is deputy mayor for the city of New York, and Kate Levin, who leads the arts team and was the commissioner for the Department of Cultural Affairs. So they did 500 public art projects throughout their 12 years running the city. And that was launched with Jean-Claude and Christo's The Gates in 2003. And that was seen as a really successful project, not only because it was beautiful, but it was one of the first projects to get great press about New York City in a post 9/11 world and stimulated about $254 million of economic benefit. So people were coming back and spurred tourism for the city and brought people together in public space in Central Park. And so that spurred the 500 subsequent projects and then brought that project, the ethos of public art and what it can do in cities.
I remember that project came out. Yeah, yeah. I remember that project came out. The orange gates, right? They're all orange.
The orange gates. So I was a student at the time, and I had no idea I would be working at the foundation many, many years later. But my best friend and I in college, we were studying art history, and we saw it, a beautiful photo, orange gates, the background of white snow in Central Park. And we thought, what is this? This is incredible. We have to go to New York to see this. So we did a road trip and, came to the city and saw Avenue Q, saw Broadway shows, ate dinner. So all of those things that we talk about, all of those positive impacts of supporting local economies when you travel for culture. I'm proud to be one of those data points looking back.
I love it. I'm curious how you all choose recipients too. The mayors, they apply, but how does that work specifically?
So we do an application and we share that application with mayors and cities and cultural organizations and really try to promote it everywhere. It's such a great opportunity for cities. And the parameters are that cities with 30,000 or more residents can apply. Mayors need deep engagement in the project, and the projects have to bring public and private collaborations together and focus on a local challenge. And those are the parameters. And then we do deep internal review. We have a jury who assesses the projects, feasibility, creativity, and we interview the project teams, the city teams, and then we announce the finalists. So last round we had 17 finalists, the prior round we had 14. So the mayors get really excited about it and we make it very public. And then we announce this round at City Lab, which is a global conference we do with mayors. And that was announced October 2023 at City Lab in DC. And so our current cities, the cities we're working with, Atlanta, Georgia, Baltimore, Orlando, Houston, Honolulu, Philadelphia, Phoenix, and Salt Lake City.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. I'm also curious if some of those projects, you announce all of the finalists, but not everybody gets chosen. So do some of those folks that don't get chosen, do they go on to try to continue doing the projects that they've come together to propose, or is it something where they come back maybe the next time and ask again?
Both.
No?
Both. And some do, of course, say, maybe they're able to do it on a smaller scale. And that's, part of a later assessment. But that is an exciting thing about bringing these collaborations together, just to create the application. The cities have to reach out to nonprofits, or in some cases, the nonprofits are actually reaching out to the city. And sometimes it's multiple city departments attached to a project. There may be an artist attached to a project and local nonprofits. And so you've gotten these entities that don't typically work together to think really creatively about how they can continue the city's current great work in solving problems and bringing people together. And just to go through the application process, they start building a team and start identifying who they need to work with and spaces they need to work in as part of executing a public art project. The cities are crucial in getting permitting. Nonprofits are really critical in oftentimes being the fiscal sponsor for the project, bringing the artists on board. We work with all manner of city departments on security and getting, the Department of Public Works to allow us to work in certain spaces. So just to go through the process of putting together a really strong application, the cities have done a lot of the work. And so that's an exciting part of what we're trying to achieve, just making these partnerships come to life and bringing all of these various people who would not typically be working together. Now they're sitting at the table together. And even if they aren't, quote unquote, winners of the Public Art Challenge, city government is now aware of great nonprofits in their community or great artists in their community, and so can do work similar or different together in the future.
As I was going through some of these projects, I was thinking, like, how do you find these really amazing folks who do this art, right? Like, because finding people generally is like a needle in a haystack a lot of times, whether you're looking for somebody to do some sort of a mural or something along those lines that reflects the neighborhoods that they live in, et cetera, or do social media to, like, promote a cause or something along those lines. It's always hard to find people that you get along with or, have the same visions as. So I'm curious, like, if you heard any stories about how some of these groups came together to pitch for some of the funding, because I find that really fascinating to, like, figure out where some of the folks come from or how they come together.
Yeah, our partners are really incredible. And the ones who are the winners, like our 8 cities currently, but the 17 cities we've worked with, they all have strong curatorial oversight. So whether they've brought on a curator for the project or the cultural nonprofit, it could be a museum, it could be, a community center, but someone who has a strong arts vision, that is really helpful in terms of, like, finding the artist for your mural. Like, do they have a strong curator on board who can shepherd that process? Sometimes there's an artist attached to the project. In many cases this round, they did a call for artists. And so local artists filled out an application, and that was great for the cities because they discovered a lot of incredible and talented local artists in their community that they hadn't had the pleasure of yet working with. And now they're part of, the city's Office of Arts and Culture knows this new group of local artists. Salt Lake City, their project was addressing the decline of the Great Salt Lake. And so they did a call for local artists to do projects in their 7 city council districts. They had 13 artists total. 12 artists were local and in Salt Lake City, and they're artists that the city now knows very well. And they're a part of a cohort of artists. The artists came out to support one another's openings throughout the last 2 years, which was incredible. And then they just had a signature commission, which was done by the internationally renowned artist Olafur Eliasson, who's Danish Icelandic artist. And he created a 40-foot orb that was a light and sound installation in a major park. And to have that at the end of the 2-year period and see all of the local artists come out to celebrate that work, and then to see Olafur Eliasson be able to meet all of these artists, that was an incredible community of artists that the city of Salt Lake really shepherded and stewarded. And so now they've created, like, a new artist community that they want to keep going. The city of Phoenix did a project, Sombra, which addressed shade. Over 100 days in city of Phoenix are over 100 degrees. And so they have been coming up with really creative ways to create shade, particularly in parks that someone underinvested in and don't have other shade structures or a lot of trees. And so they also did a call for artists. And so a new group of artists who the city is able to support. We saw the same thing, artists coming out to support one another. And the Office of Art and Culture at the City of Phoenix stewarded that process. So we choose partners who are capable of selecting a strong group of artists. We want to make sure that they have, their own strong application process, if not an artist already attached. But there's a myriad of ways that artists have come to the project, but largely stewarded by curators, the partner arts and culture nonprofits, and in some situations, the community is also part of that selection process alongside a jury. But the partners are in charge of selecting those artists. So we work very closely with them. We provide a lot of guidance and stewardship as we've done a lot of public art projects. There's a lot of knowledge at Bloomberg Philanthropies how to do public art projects in cities. So we are able to share that knowledge with our partner cities, but they direct the application process and the selection process. And of course, we give guidance and support.
I love the idea that like you could possibly be finding artists that could then become like the voice of or the vision of a city. Here in San Francisco specifically, one of my favorite artists is Hollis Callis, and she has been one of these people that kind of was under the radar for a while, but then the city hired her to do the I voted stamp, so
Wow.
the sticker that you get after you vote. And so from there, she's
So
done
important.
yeah, I know, right? It's really cool. And then she's done like street art, she's done murals, and then she's also like for my soccer team, which you can see this bus behind me. This is my soccer team, SF City
Nice.
FC. And she did the Pride jersey one year. Her style was part of that. So she's become like part of the city. And so I feel like that's a really exciting proposition that some of these artists might actually end up being found in this way and then also become something bigger and mean something more to their city.
Yeah, that's a great point. Our artists this round, we've had a lot more projects that work with transit. And so in Honolulu, which is our Vahipana project that's addressing Native Hawaiian stories in over touristed areas, one of the 12 installations is a bus. It's a city bus wrapped by a vinyl mural by the artist Corey Tom. And the Vahipana bus has become it has like a cult following in the city, and people tag it on social media when they see it en route. And it doesn't have one specific route, which is really nice because a larger group of people are able to see it and they never know when they're going to see it. So the Vahipana bus, and now there's a handy van which goes into neighborhoods and provides, greater accessibility. Both of these transportation methods have this great social media following, and Corey Tom has a new presence in the city. So yeah, it's exciting to see people really organically adopt these installations and respond to them and see them as theirs. That's such a win when they see an artist project as theirs. And I would say also in Phoenix with the Shade Project, because many of the artists were working in parks that were attached to community centers or adjacent to schools, a lot of the artists did a really great job of working. And of course, the city Office of Arts and Culture shepherded this, working with local organizations by the park. So people would come to workshops and, help build, help fabricate the work. One work by Bobby Zakaitis in Phoenix called Botanical Canopy created this beautiful canopy structure over a bridge that's used for like fishing and, just pedestrian walking and people hanging out on a really hot day. And he taught people how to loom and weave these gorgeous petals made out of vinyl and a lot of more organic materials. And so he had these great workshops where just hundreds of people he was able to work with. And that's always such a win when you have that community engagement. Another installation was Rincon de Color in another park in Phoenix, and they were able to work with high school students. And the high school students were really excited and they came to the workshops and they were painting and, to be able to work with students and work with youth and get kids out of their shell, especially at that age, like junior and senior year. It's such a win and really exciting. And then you go out and it's a solar powered installation where if you're standing under it, water mists on you. And so that's incredible that you're in this major park without a lot of shade. You'll be able to get cooling. And these installations provided up to 45 degrees of reprieve from the heat, like 45-degree impact, ranging from 18 to 45 degrees alongside the 9 installations. So there's a lot of excitement about the projects, which of course are all temporary. But yeah, we're really excited that local artists are able to participate and, continue to do other types of work in the city.
Going back to thinking about the Hawaii bus, one thing that was interesting to me is that like a lot of agencies are having trouble with their funding. And a lot of times for the buses, they'll try to do wraps, and the wraps are advertising. And I find it really great that instead of just the ability to put advertising on your bus, you could actually put an art installation on your bus. There's some frustrations also with like covering the windows, which I know a lot of transit advocates have, but the Hawaii bus was actually done very tastefully in terms of like not covering up all the windows.
Yes, we follow all parameters with bus shelters and buses on not covering the windows, not covering the sides of the glass panels in the case of our Houston project. And I will say on advertising, our project in Philadelphia, which is a poetry project that's responding to gun violence, Healing versus Germantown, they are working not only with the Department of Transportation, but with the advertising agency and putting art in the panel of the bus shelters where advertising typically goes. So now we have murals in a space where there's typically advertising. So to your point about yes, we should absolutely be using art. And it was so smart of the teams to identify that as an opportunity for them.
Yeah. I just find it really refreshing just because, everything seems to be commoditized these days. A lot of folks are trying to advertise and for good reason. Obviously, the transit agencies need money. But at the same time, like maybe that's why the buses have maybe a little bit more of a following, because it isn't the typical bus covering that you usually see because of, the advertising or other things. I'm wondering how much of the art we should expect people to like understand right away versus how much should be explained. I'm curious about how people come to it or how they experience it when they see it.
That's a great question. All matters of experience. So people absolutely happen upon the work. People go to the work on purpose. We are doing so much work with all of the teams to help promote, whether it's on their website, on our guide. We have created maps for all of the cities so they can share those with their constituencies, so they can actually see all of the sites. We have signage at all of the sites that explicitly talks about what the project is, what the installation is. We have to be really deliberate and not assume that people know what work is. And that's kind of the great thing about public art, especially if it's in a vacant lot in a place where you're not expecting to see anything, let alone something beautiful. And people get arrested by the installations and question why they're there and, start questioning why we don't have more, which is a great question.
Excellent question.
But yeah, we do a lot of communications, both on the press side and the on-site marketing, and then with social media to help let people know that the work is there because it's for a pretty finite period. Some work is a performance, so that's quite fleeting. Some work is up for a year. So just really communicating those timelines, what the work is, who the artists are, and expressing that this is a collaborative team. People should know that this is great work that their cities have done for them. So the cities are behind us and have brought together these nonprofits and artists. We also have an app called Bloomberg Connects, which is a free digital guide available to cultural organizations. And on our Public Art Challenge guide, we have all of the cities listed and have built out their projects, both images and descriptions. So that's a place where the projects can live in posterity since they are temporary in nature.
I love listening to the artists and their family members talk about the art, like the wooden sculptures in Hawaii, the bus wraps, the tile representation of Kamehameha's Law of the Splintered Paddle. I could never pronounce the names like they could in the videos, but I'm glad to hear them do it. I'm always impressed by kind of the presentation of it as well, like in the videos and the way that people talk about it. It was really fun to kind of experience that through them.
Yeah, the Honolulu project is really special. It's our project that really centers Indigenous voices. And when you go to the sites, there's been, first of all, a lot of ceremony to open each installation site. A lot of the work is explained in Olelo, Hawaii, the native language. Of course, it's in English as well, but Native Hawaiian culture is really centered. And so, absolutely, we want to tell Native Hawaiian stories to tourists, to visitors, but it's also very important that this community sees their culture reflected, and it's a reclamation of their culture and their spaces and the communication of that incredible history.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Houston, my hometown.
Ah,
Yeah.
yes. Our human shelter
The
project.
Hue Man, yeah, Hue, which was hue from the color. I love the play on words there. Um, 3 bus stops, large format murals, arts under highway posts, and they're all super colorful. I wonder if that was like the conscious choice on their part to be like this kind of bright explosion of color in this kind of gray spaces almost.
Yeah, they were very conscious that they are competing with the Midtown district. So that project, Human Shelter, is working with the city of Houston, Midtown Arts Management, a series of artists, and a cohort of unsheltered participants who are all under Career Recovery Resources, which is a nonprofit that serves the homeless community. And they've been really invaluable in connecting us to the participants who've been so generous in sharing their stories. This project is a way to employ this group and also get them into hopefully permanent housing and economic resources through, job opportunities. So this, again, unlikely group of partners has come together and identified sites in Midtown, which has struggled with homelessness, as many, cities around the world have. And they identified their transit areas. So bus shelters and underpasses, and the facade of actually Career Recovery Resources, which is located in Midtown Houston, to create really vibrant, colorful spaces that have been done by local artists and in partnership with the cohort from Career Recovery Resources. They have done workshops, they've done site cleaning and maintenance. So lots of skills building and job training for this unhoused community, and also an opportunity for them to be part of the creative workforce. And these projects have really illuminated the Midtown area. As you said, the colors are super vibrant. They're competing with Midtown, which is a cacophony of sirens, which are going off outside of my my apartment right now, and bus and car transit. Houston is, of course, a car transit city, but they've been really successful in identifying areas that whether you're walking, there's a lot of walking tours that are happening to show off the bus shelters, or driving under the underpasses. They are illuminated in a new way. And one of the underpasses is at the Spur, which is a major underpass area. And they were successful in getting lighting. They talked to the Department of Transportation and were very grateful to the state Department of Transportation for allowing that site to be used. So the Metro is a partner, so worked with them on the bus shelters, but then the state allowed for the underpass murals to happen. So again, great partnerships happening because of this project. And hopefully we'll just advocate for more projects like this.
How do you feel when a lot of these projects come about and they're very vibrant, they're colorful, they're really impactful, but then they get packed up or maybe some of them disappear? And it's not like the ideas disappear or the people disappear, but sometimes the visibility of it disappears. I'm curious like what that impacts about the projects afterwards.
So we actually do an evaluation to assess the impact of the projects. And all of the projects thus far have had over $100 million in economic impact. So huge benefit to cities. The fact that they are temporary in nature creates a lot of excitement around the project. So people are spurred to go see them while they're up for a short time. So you must go see it now. And It helps us get public art up in places that most likely have really strong permitting processes, and the temporary nature of the projects allow for more public art to take place. And of course, it hopefully builds will for cities and, local entities to do more public art and to also support the arts, because once it's up and we are able to support it with the $1 million grant, that helps the city build a case that there should be more art. Also, the teams are able to hire artists as part of this project, build partnerships. And so that is something that stays with the project. I'll also say, part of the building the public will for the projects, some of the projects have become permanent because people loved them so much. So a past project in Coral Springs and Parkland, which was done in the wake of the Parkland massacre, one of the artists, collectives, the Ladd brothers, conducted a project called the Scrollathon. So they brought people. They worked in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School. They worked in local schools and hospitals and senior centers and brought people together to tell their stories and have art therapy heal while helping to create a collaborative installation. That's a series of dozens of fabric scrolls that they bring together. That was on view for a long time in the park in Parkland, and then is now on view in the Coral Springs Hospital. Our Tulsa Greenwood Art Project, which commemorated the centennial of the Tulsa Race Massacre in 2021, brought together 32 artists led by Rick Lowe, the city of Tulsa, and the Tulsa Race Massacre Centennial Commission. That project had some permanent, lasting impacts, such as the bridge, the highway that bisected Greenwood. So not only was there this horrible massacre that killed hundreds of people, but then 1950s and 60s urban infrastructure further decimated the Greenwood neighborhood with a highway that was driven right through the neighborhood. Worked with the State Department of Transportation, who provided funds to reconnect the neighborhood with a pathway to hope. So lots of landscaping and a walkway so you could actually get from one section of the neighborhood to the next, which you were not able to because of this highway. And Rick Lowe and his partner, artist partner William Cordova, curated that pathway, and there are a series of photographs on what was before just like a highway bridge. And so there's a lot of projects. Our project in Camden that cleaned out brown fields. Not only were they able to attract tens of millions of dollars in city, state, national grants to continue to clean up brown fields, they were able to continue commissioning some of the artists for other projects. One of the high schools loved the Invincible Cat, which was like a Black Panther sculpture. It resembled their mascot, so they took that on. Their rival high school got jealous and they wanted a mascot very similar. So the artists DKLA were commissioned to do another sculpture. So, we see examples like that where more art commissions happen, artists get more business, and there's more public art in these spaces because once it's there, people want to keep it. And it really encourages the additions of new creative interventions in communities.
You just gave me an idea from the Hawaii example, and then just talking, I was thinking about, buses and them running all over the city and like the possibility of permanence. And that game Pokemon Go that people were playing, like probably a lot of people still play it, right? Like
2016.
it was 2016, it was such a big deal, right? But like,
Big
what
deal.
if like every bus had a different like character or something to connect with? And so like you could chase these buses all over the city. It'd be interesting to see, what that means for like the continuation of, and the high school example that you gave was interesting too, just like the rival high school wanting
Yes, I hope there are more local artists working
like
with
that.
departments of transportation after this, for sure.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about what Atlanta did?
Yes. Thriving Together Atlanta worked with National Black Arts Festival, Out of Hand Theater in the city of Atlanta to address public health and healthcare equality. So they did two murals, a big festival, and have now done 76 equitable dinners, which are community dinners with a play about the disparities in healthcare. And then there's a facilitated conversation afterwards by an expert. So people all over the city of Atlanta, and they've worked in neighborhoods that, well, they've worked in every neighborhood, but also largely focus on neighborhoods that are historically underinvested in. So bringing more permanent beauty with the murals. So that's an example of two permanent installations that the National Black Arts Festival and the city will oversee going forward. And then the community dinners brought people together in conversation about what it looks like for different communities to have different types of care, particularly healthcare. And they developed this play by working in schools and hospitals and religious organizations and community centers all over Atlanta, iterated the play for a year, and then kind of debuted a final version of the play at the festival that was done September 2025. And it was just it's very special for them to be able to work so deeply in communities, to have people, what they call the movable middle. So people who may be aware of healthcare disparities, particularly for Black and Brown populations, but are not aware of what they can do to help, or they've heard of it, but haven't gone far beyond that. So this play really personalizes the experience that has been taken from many stories and synthesized into a 10-minute play. Extremely personal. And then that opens people up to then have a meal and then a conversation about what they've experienced in healthcare or how they didn't know that this was happening. Also, of course, wanting to do that with students and with families is amazing. Also, they've done it with healthcare providers. So they've done it in hospitals and, sharing this with every side. Like, this is how people are feeling when they come into your spaces and you're providing care. They've also been successful in working in universities and with people who work in hospitals, but maybe not as a medical provider, but maybe in the accounts and billing department. So they understand how their interactions with patients affect people's ability to reach out and get care when they need. So it's definitely a project that has spurred a lot of conversations and really helping people feel more seen and cared for. As part of our local evaluation and national evaluation, we share data on civic pride and how people are feeling about the civic issues. And we have a hypothesis that these projects really improve that, and our data shares that and confirms that. So to be working in Atlanta and talking about healthcare disparities is huge. And that is actually my hometown. So very excited to be a part of the support and help that team has in helping people in Atlanta.
That's awesome. What do you take away from these projects?
I take away an incredible faith in democracy. As you can see, we have a wide range we have geographic diversity in the projects, different types of cities all over the nation. And I'm able to see the work happen at all these cities. So I traveled to all of these cities, and it's just incredible how many people are doing incredible work to just make their neighborhoods better, to make their communities better, and doing it through art. So as a culture worker myself, it's incredibly inspiring. All of our partners are just really brilliant, and they've been successful at identifying the right partners to work with, because these projects are, as you can imagine, doing anything in public space is difficult. And then it's over a 2-year term. So having the right partners who are already embedded in the community and help bring people to see the work is really important. Having the right people inform the work is really important, so it is received correctly. That was really important, I would say, when we were working in Tulsa for the centennial commemoration. It's just a project that you absolutely have to get right. And so being able to work with local artists telling their family stories. Part of what made the centennial commemoration really unique was that we were addressing a suppressed history. So though it was 100 years later, it was the first time any of the stories had been shared. So Rick Lowe, the artist who led that project, said a conversation needs to happen. And in many ways, this biennial style 32 artists sharing their work was a citywide conversation about what the Tulsa Race Massacre actually was, what the Black Wall Street Massacre was. So it's a commemoration, but also the first time people are really publicly sharing the story and telling that story from local perspective when the world is watching and having it be their project, their voice. Many of them were descendants of people who lived in Greenwood and on Black Wall Street. So it's just really important that, we could help provide the space for them to do that. So when I travel to these places, many of the places I'd never been before this project, I learned so much from the cities and the nonprofits and the artists and the residents. I mean, you see residents come out again and again for the same projects, and there are new communities being built in each of these cities through these projects. The teams are successful. They're broadly reaching communities, they're broadly reaching an audience, but there's often a core group of people who come out for exhibit after exhibit, installation after installation, performance after performance, and they're a part of the work too. So I think that watching people come together and art being the vehicle for bringing people together and beautifying, vacant spaces, spaces that are not visited with these entities having the power of a city behind that, it really is thrilling and such a privilege to be part of that type of work. So that's what I take away.
You probably have talked about this a number of times. This is a question I like to ask folks, kind of spin things around a little bit. What's something that people don't ask you a lot about, but you wish people did, or you wish people would talk about?
I think one of the things that I love about the projects is I get to see the sites before the art is installed. And so a lot of the places are not places that people would be visiting, or you're not necessarily paying attention to a bus shelter or a sidewalk. And so I am particularly attuned to the before and after the change of the project. So I think a lot of people see the work and it's very exciting. They get very inspired, but I'm also very focused on the incredible improvements that the work brings to the sites, because not only is there artwork there, the teams have done a lot of work in preparing the site. So they may have done a lot of landscaping. And so what was previously, say in the case of Baltimore, our Inviting Light project that is bringing creative lighting to the Station North Arts District. Akene Gioma just opened an installation in a residential neighborhood that was two vacant lots. And it's something that you wouldn't pay attention to. And so now you see the work, beautiful light pole installations with landscaping around them. But I'm particularly attuned to like how far the team has come in making that happen and how much work it takes for these partners to come together. It's also incredible that they've taken this on top of the very difficult work of running a city or running a nonprofit. Like that job is still happening. And they've taken this on. So that's also something that stays with me, just how dedicated all of these partners are and working, nights, weekends, mornings. I also think it's really important, I think the idea that everything is temporary comes up a lot, and that's by design, but I think the lasting impacts of the projects are so important. Our project in Coral Springs and Parkland, those two cities started working together after this project. So the city departments, they knew each other because of this project. And so I think a lot of the work that is maybe unseen to the public, but like will make someone's city better is really important. Our partners in Philadelphia, the Healing versus Germantown Project, which is a poetry project providing healing after gun violence. Deputy Commissioner Massey, Maisha Massey, Deputy Commissioner of Police, is extremely involved in this project. One of their 19 installations are poems that are given to city police officers that will be worn in their hats. And it was really important for her to get police involved and for people to understand, that she comes from a community policing background. And so that's incredible to hear the Deputy Commissioner of Police talk about how art is really important in healing, also for police officers, and have them participate in one of the installations. And so again, like unseen work, that there's a poem in their hats and that they're keeping that with them and hearing those poems read at their roll calls, really important. So there's a lot of work we've also been seeing with the projects that is the build up to the actual installation. The teams have been really smart at bringing people together with workshops and events, and a lot of those conversations with the artists and the team listening and hearing feedback from the community has informed the ultimate artwork that you see. So, like I said, the equitable dinners in Atlanta, that is a victory in of itself, but also helped inform, it created a final play that was performed around the city and performed at the festival. The Greenwood Art Project in Tulsa brought all of those people together for the commemoration, but for the 2 to 3 years leading up to the commemoration, Rick Lowe, the city of Tulsa, Tulsa Race Massacre Centennial Commission, been talking to entities throughout Greenwood about what the centennial meant to them. And so that you see the installations, that's the tip of the spear, but there's been so much community work that goes into these projects, and I think that really strengthens them. I'll also say our Jackson project, Fertile Ground, they did a documentary that launched on PBS, and that project was addressing food insecurity in Jackson, Mississippi. And of their over a dozen installations, one was the first organic urban farm. They had a series of murals that were in response to COVID, so people could social distance. And they were so savvy at speaking to community members that they built more and more partners. So what originally started out as 3 installations in their downtown area then was over a dozen installations throughout Jackson because they were being responsive to the community's needs. And there are 5 murals that were open during COVID. That was a response to a horrific global pandemic that we were all experiencing together. And then the urban organic farm that they had developed was then able to help feed people during COVID, which of course exacerbated food insecurity. And then the work they did in developing their documentary that launched on PBS allowed them to discover, and the evaluation process allowed them to discover that one key element of food disparity is that people don't have direct access to fresh food grocers. And if you don't have a car, you're relying on the bus. And the bus routes were not going directly to fresh food providers. So then the city of Jackson rerouted all of the JTRAN buses, and each bus has a direct route to a fresh food provider. And that's an incredible change for that community where people are able to access fresh food and still take public transportation to do so. So there's a lot of before the installations are open, but also the after effects of the installations that I think are incredibly important. And art is incredibly powerful, and art for art's sake absolutely beautifies communities. And then also look at the incredible benefits that the art has created, whether it's feeding people, providing awareness about health disparities, and providing access to fresh food.
Where can folks find out more about what you've been up to?
You can go to our website, Public Art Challenge at Bloomberg.org, or visit the Public Art Challenge Guide on Bloomberg Connects, which is always being updated, and you'll find out information about our 17 cities since 2014, or our current 8 cities, which are currently in round 3.
And where can folks find you if you wish to be found?
I don't have a public social profile, but you should absolutely follow Bloomberg.org. There's a lot of public art challenge work that's featured on our Instagram and X and, social feeds, and just all of the great work that Bloomberg Philanthropies helps to support. And sometimes I make a cameo on there, but everyone should just really follow Bloomberg Philanthropies. And of course, all of our 8 cities projects, and you can find out more about their social feeds on the Bloomberg Connects app.
Awesome. Well, Stephanie, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really great to talk to you about art.
And thanks for joining us. The Talking Headways podcast is a project of The Overhead Wire and published first at Streetsblog USA. Thanks to our wonderful Patreon supporters for sponsoring this week's show and Mondays at The Overhead Wire. Find us at patreon.com/TheOverheadWire. And you can sign up for our 16-year-old newsletter at TheOverheadWire.com. And you can also listen to our show on your podcatcher of choice, including Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. And if you can't find it there, you can always find its original home at usa.streetsblog.org. We'll see you next time at Talking Headways.